You see, there is a curious thing about being human. We spend our lives looking, searching, reaching, hoping that somewhere out there is the path, the truth, the answer, the way. And yet, have you ever wondered why the more desperately you look for peace, the more restless you become? Why the harder you chase happiness, the further it seems to slip away? What if the very act of searching is the very thing that makes you unable to see? Tonight, we explore a paradox at the heart of Alan Watts' teachings, a truth so simple, so quiet, that the mind constantly trips over it. You can't find the way by looking for it, not because it is hidden, but because you, the seeker, are the one in the way. Let us walk together into this wayless way. Part 1. The search that hides the way. You see, there's a curious thing about the human mind. It is always in pursuit, chasing, striving, reaching, yearning, and in that very motion of reaching, it moves away from what it seeks. The more you try to grasp the water, the less of it you hold. And yet, without trying to hold, you are immersed in it completely. We imagine that life is a journey, a great pilgrimage towards something. Enlightenment, success, peace, salvation. But I tell you, you can't find the way by looking for it. Because the very act of looking is the mistake, the search that hides the sought. Now imagine you are standing in a dark room searching for your glasses. You search under the bed, on the table, behind the lamp, becoming increasingly anxious. And then suddenly you realize you're wearing them. The search was futile because what you were looking for was the very instrument through which you looked. That is how it is with life. We go hunting for the path to happiness, for meaning, for the right way to live, when all along we are using the very consciousness that is already it. The seeker is the sought. The path is the walking. The destination is the step you are taking right now. But the mind, clever little thing, doesn't like that answer. It wants something to do, something to fix, something to find. So it invents religions, philosophies, techniques, meditations, self-improvement programs. It constructs elaborate stairways to heaven. And yet, the harder we climb, the further heaven recedes, for it was never up there to begin with. The paradox of pursuit. Seeking implies separation. To search for truth is to assume that truth is somewhere else, that it is not you. But if you were not already truth, how could you ever recognize it when you found it? When you look for reality, who is the one that looks? When you look for peace, who is it that wants peace? And when you think you've lost your way, who is it that wandered? That very eye who searches is the illusion, the mirage on the horizon that forever retreats as you move toward it. It is the monkey mind, restless, curious, anxious to improve itself. It wants to be spiritual, so it puts on robes and chants, mantras. It wants to be enlightened, so it chases after gurus. It wants to dissolve the ego, but even that is just the ego trying to annihilate itself, which is a delicious contradiction. Trying to get rid of your ego with your ego is like trying to bite your own teeth, the game of hide and seek. Life, I think, is a cosmic game of hide and seek. The universe hides itself in 10,000 forms, pretending to be trees and rivers and people and stars. And then slowly, playfully, it begins to remember, I was all this, all along. You are the universe looking for itself. But when you start trying to find the universe, when you clutch at it, it vanishes. Because that clutching, that trying, is the veil that hides it. It's like trying to make a still pond reflect the moon by stirring it. The art of living the true way is not about forcing stillness, but about letting the pond settle by itself. It doesn't mean stopping movement. It means seeing through it, the illusion of control. We love to imagine we're steering our lives, that if only we could think hard enough, discipline ourselves enough, read enough books, we'd get it right. But what is right? Is the way a river flows ever wrong? The river winds, twists, floods, dries, and yet always arrives at the ocean. Not because it knows where it's going, but because it cannot go anywhere else. You too are like that river. You cannot be off your path because you are the path. Even your detours, your mistakes, your wanderings, they are part of the flowing. But the mind refuses to accept this spontaneity. It wants maps, systems, guarantees. It wants to know what's next, and so it tightens. It holds on to life the way one might clench sand in a fist, and then complains that life keeps slipping away. The music of existence. Consider music. The point of a song isn't to reach the final note. If that were the case, composers would only write endings. The meaning of music is in the playing, the unfolding of pattern and rhythm. We dance with it, not to it. In the same way, the meaning of life is not at the end of it. It is not something to achieve. It is the very act of being alive. The Wayless Way is the recognition that there never was a separate you trying to find something. V126. There is only the dance. And the moment you stop insisting on leading, you find that life has been dancing you all along. So, stop trying. Someone will say, "All right, Alan, I'll stop trying. I'll let go." But then that becomes another attempt. The I who decides to let go is still clinging to the idea of letting go. So what do? Absolutely nothing. And yet that nothing is not apathy. It is awareness, a relaxed vigilance, like the way you listen to the wind without trying to catch it. You watch thoughts, feelings, fears come and go. You don't interfere. And in that gentle non-doing, something extraordinary happens. The watcher and the watched dissolve into one. Part 2, the paradox of effort and effortlessness. You see, the trouble with being human is that we are forever caught in the tension between effort and surrender. We are told, work hard and you will succeed. And at the same time, let go and you will be free. Well, actions question. So we push and we pull, tighten and release, laboring endlessly between should and must. And yet the Wayless Way, is not found in effort or in its absence. It arises when effort forgets itself. Let me explain. When you play music, you must learn the notes, the timing, the rhythm. You practice scales, memorize finger positions, discipline the body. But then, at some moment, if you wish to play beautifully, you must forget all that practice. You must stop trying to play and simply play. The melody flows not from effort, but from the release of effort, a sort of effortless mastery. The way works precisely like that. Most of us misunderstand what letting go means. We imagine it as a kind of strategy, something to do. We say, "All right, I'll let go." But behind that decision hides another effort, a subtle pushing to achieve non-effort. It's like trying to sleep by telling yourself to fall asleep. The more you try, the more awake you become. Trying to find peace creates anxiety about not having it. Trying to be spontaneous makes you self-conscious. Trying to be natural turns you into an actor, pretending to be real. So what can one do? Nothing. And everything. The moment you see through the trick of effort, effort relaxes by itself. Awareness reveals that striving is like a dog chasing its own tail. It's amusing, perhaps even endearing, but it leads nowhere. When you realize that, truly realize it, the tail chasing stops. Not because you made it stop, but because you finally saw there was never anyone chasing. The mind is not meant to be a hammer pounding away at problems. It's meant to be a mirror, clear, still, reflecting whatever appears. But what do? We smudge it with judgments, anxieties, hopes, fears. We say, "I must polish this mirror, make it perfect." And in doing so, we scratch it even more. When you stop fussing with the mirror, it clears itself. Not because you cleaned it, but because you left it alone. The same is true of your mind. When you stop trying to still it, when you stop commanding it to be peaceful, peace arises naturally. Peace is the default state of awareness, when it is not disturbed by striving. To understand this, imagine you are a wave upon the vast ocean. You rise and fall, sometimes proud and tall, sometimes small and broken. You feel separate. "I am this wave," you say, "and I must hold myself together, maintain my shape, find my direction." But the more you try to control your movement, the more you suffer, the push and pull of the sea. And one day, in exhaustion, you stop. You surrender not as defeat, but as realization. You realize, "I was never just a wave. I am the ocean, moving as this form, for a little while." And suddenly, what was struggle becomes flow. You don't cease to move. The waves still rise and fall, but now it is effortless because the you who thought it had to manage everything has dissolved back into the rhythm of the whole. Freedom, then, is not the absence of limitations. It is the recognition that the limitations were never binding in the first place. When a bird flies through the air, it is not free from the air, it is free because of the air. The very resistance that could seem to confine it becomes the medium of its flight. So it is with you. Life is not something you must rise above. It is the air through which you move, the sea that carries you, the music that plays you. And the harder you resist it, the heavier it feels. But the moment you dance with it, even clumsily, grace appears. We are all haunted by the desire to understand. We want to make sense of the universe, to name it, label it, capture it with words. But understanding is not the same as knowing. Understanding is analysis, taking things apart to see how they work. Knowing is immediate, spontaneous, intimate, like the way you know how to breathe, how to laugh, how to love. When you stand before a sunset and simply behold it, without comparing, analyzing, or even saying beautiful, that is knowing, that is communion. But the moment you think, I must capture this beauty, the moment you reach for your phone to take a picture, it's already gone. You have stepped out of the living moment, into the shadow of thought. That is the problem of seekers. They live in shadows, concepts of enlightenment, images of perfection, fantasies of future realization. And all the while, reality sits quietly beside them, smiling, waiting for them to stop talking long enough to notice. And perhaps, the cosmic joke is that you must go through the seeking in order to see the futility of seeking. Just as a child must chase butterflies before realizing that the beauty of the butterfly was in its flight, not in its capture. So I do not tell you, stop seeking to well. That would only be another command, another game for the ego. Instead I say, watch the seeker. See how it moves, how it arises from fear, loneliness, from the longing to be secure. And in watching it, you will see that the seeker itself is part of the dance. When the music stops, there is no dancer left, only the dance itself. So, what is the way? If there is a way, it is the wayless way. It cannot be found because it was never lost. It cannot be taught because it is what you already are. To find it, stop looking. To see it, stop trying to see. To understand it, stop naming it. The wayless way moves through you every moment. In your breath, your laughter, your confusion, your sorrow. When you finally give up the search for a better life, life ceases to be a problem and becomes an art. And when effort dissolves into seeing, and seeking dissolves into awareness, something new begins to bloom. The art of surrender. Not as a choice, but as a recognition. Let us continue. Part 3, the art of surrender and the mirror of awareness. You see, surrender is not something the mind can do, because surrender is the ending of the one who tries to do anything at all. The mind hears the word surrender and thinks, yes, another technique, another step on the spiritual ladder. I'll master this too. But in that very thought, surrender slips away, like a drop of water off the wing of a bird. True surrender is not obedience. It is not giving up in despair. It is not resignation. It is trust. A deep, unspoken trust in the current of life itself, that the same force which beats your heart and moves the stars knows what it's doing, even if you don't. Look at the river. It twists through mountains, cuts through stone, carves valleys, yet never hurries. If you try to dam it, it finds another way. If you let it flow, it sings. And yet, have you noticed? The river never says, I must reach the ocean. It doesn't even know what the ocean is. It simply moves, and in its very movement, it arrives. Now imagine if the river were like us, constantly analyzing, doubting, comparing itself to other rivers. Am I flowing fast enough? Am I spiritually aligned? Should I be more mindful while I flow? It would dry itself out with worry. But the real river, the one whispering under bridges and stones, knows only to flow, because that is its nature. And you, too, are the river. When you stop trying to control the direction, you discover you were never separate from the current. In the first place, the awareness you call I, the watcher, the witness, is not something you can turn off or on. It's what remains when every effort has dissolved. Imagine a mirror that reflects everything. Mountains, clouds, the faces of strangers, and even its own cracks and dust. It doesn't choose what to reflect. It doesn't resist the ugly or cling to the beautiful. It simply mirrors. That is awareness. When anger arises, it reflects anger. When peace arises, it reflects peace. It doesn't hold on, doesn't push away. It is the great acceptance, the silent yes beneath every sound. But the moment you try to control what appears in the mirror, you've lost it. Because now there's a you, separate from what is, a you who wants only certain reflections. That you is the distortion, the mirror itself untouched, infinite, never changes. You can't force a flower to open by pulling on its petals. You can only create the right conditions, sunlight, water, patience, and let it unfold in its own rhythm. That's how awakening happens. It's not an achievement, it's a recognition. It's the flower realizing, I was blooming all along. When you stop digging for truth, truth comes to you. When you stop demanding clarity, clarity appears on its own, like a pond settling, after the stone of thought has fallen in. Of course, we resist surrender because we fear losing control. But have you ever really been in control? You didn't decide to be born. You don't regulate your heartbeat, your digestion, your breathing. You don't grow your hair or remember to keep the earth spinning. Control is a story, a comforting illusion that says, I am the one steering this ship, unquote. But look closely, and you see, the ship is steering itself, and you, the captain, are part of the sea. Surrender, then, is not losing control. It is seeing that there was never anyone separate to control anything. The wave never commanded the tide. It was the tide all along. There comes a moment, perhaps in joy, perhaps in heartbreak, when something in you stops fighting. It's as if the tension snaps, and suddenly you're laughing or crying, or both at once. And in that instant, you feel weightless. The world hasn't changed. You have, or rather, to you the illusion of the separate self has momentarily vanished. And what's left is simple, radiant being. You look at a leaf trembling in the light and realize, that's me. You listen to the hum of traffic and think, that's me too. You feel your chest rise and fall, and in that rhythm, you hear the heartbeat of everything. This is not mysticism. This is reality unclothed, the naked suchness of what is, before thought divides it, into you and world. The way is not a path to walk, but the walking itself. When you breathe, the way breathes. When you doubt, the way doubts. When you fall, the way falls with you. And when you rise, it rises too. You cannot step outside of it, any more than a fish can step out of the ocean to find the water. The Wayless Way means you were never lost. Every confusion, every hesitation, every mistake, they're all ripples on the surface of the same vast sea. If you grow quiet enough, if you stop trying to catch life by the tail, you'll begin to sense a still point at the center of all motion. Like the eye of a storm, it doesn't move, yet everything whirls around it. That stillness is not a void, it's pure aliveness. The silent hum beneath every thought, the timeless pulse beating before birth and after death. When you rest in that, you understand why you can't find the way by looking for it. Because you are the way, you were the seeker, and the sought, the question, and the answer, the wave, and the ocean. And when you know that, the search ends, not in conclusion, but in wonder. Part 4, the end of seeking and the joy of being. You see, once the search dissolves, what remains is not dull emptiness, but vivid aliveness, a quiet joy with no reason to exist. It is the laughter of the universe, realizing there was never a problem to solve. For the seeker, enlightenment was the goal. For the awakened, it is simply Tuesday morning. The sound of birds, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of tea cooling on the tongue. That is the extraordinary thing. about awakening. It doesn't take you anywhere new. It brings you home, to the place you never left. Life is made of moments, yes, but each one vanishes as soon as it arrives. Try to hold it, and it's gone. Ignore it, and it slips by unnoticed. But if you look closely, you'll see that between every heartbeat, between every inhale and exhale, there is a gap, a silence so vast it holds everything. That silence is not nothingness. It is the womb of everything. It is the space where awareness rests, where all forms arise and dissolve, just as waves emerge from and return to the sea. And when you listen deeply, you hear it everywhere. In the pause before a word, in the stillness after laughter, in the breath between thoughts. That silence is who you are. I sometimes think the universe is laughing at itself, and you are that laughter. You were pretending to be lost so you could experience the joy of being found. You were pretending to seek so you could rediscover what was always here. The divine game of hide and seek, the eternal self hiding as you, forgetting itself, just long enough to taste the sweetness of remembrance. How marvelous, how absurd, how beautiful. Without the seeker, there could be no finding. Without illusion, no revelation. Without time, no eternity. So do not despise the search. It was the play of the way. But know when the play is done. Know when to bow, to laugh, and to go home. After all the philosophies have spoken, after all the words have quieted, what remains? Breathing, seeing, hearing, being. You are sitting where you are, listening to these words, and everything you've ever sought is already here. The very awareness hearing this is the peace you've been chasing. The very stillness between sentences is the silence you've longed for. And the moment you recognize it, not as an idea, but as direct experience, you realize that nothing was ever missing. You never had to climb mountains to reach the sky. You only had to look up. Most people think freedom means doing whatever you want. But that freedom depends on desire. And desire is a chain. True freedom is freedom from needing freedom. It is the contentment of a child playing in the mud, utterly absorbed, not thinking about enlightenment or purpose or progress. It is the quiet recognition that wherever you are, whatever happens, you are life itself, moving as this form for a little while. What is there to fear? What could you lack? When the ocean becomes a wave, does it lose itself? When it falls back, has it died? No. It continues, forever changing form, never separate from what it always was. And that, my friend, is you. Now, everything becomes sacred, not because you've painted it with holy words, but because you've stopped dividing the sacred from the mundane. Washing dishes is meditation. Walking to the store is pilgrimage. The laughter of a stranger is the voice of God. The silence in an empty room is the same silence that cradled the Big Bang. Enlightenment is not about glowing halos or mystical visions. It's about seeing the ordinary as extraordinary, because at last you see clearly. A leaf trembling in the wind is as divine as the birth of a star. A sigh, a tear, a smile, they are all the universe, speaking in first person. So, in the end, there was never a way to find. There was only the walking, the wandering, the wonder. And as you listen now, perhaps a little quieter, a little more open, you might notice something subtle. The search has paused. The mind, tired of running in circles, has fallen silent. In that silence, the Wayless Way reveals itself, not as a destination, but as the soft hum of being. You don't have to look anymore. You don't even have to understand. You are home. You always were. Sit for a moment and let these words fade like ripples on water. Feel your breath rising and falling. Feel the stillness behind it. Listen. That quiet presence, that spacious awareness is what you've been seeking all along. There is no path. There is no traveler. There is only the endless dance of being, playing as you. And when you see that, truly see it, you'll laugh. Because you'll realize you were never trying to find the way. The way was trying to find you. And now it just did.